What's up, everyone? Welcome back to Julio G TV. Today, we are breaking ground with episode 1 of The Decree. That's the show where I bring you the latest from a local, national, and global perspective with a focus on the legal aspects of those events and also with the overall goal of uncovering the truth. And so that's what we have in store today. Also want to mention the sponsor of this video, which is Clarity Multimedia. They're responsible for our pre and post-production and everything in between. You could check them out at www.claritymultimedia.com for all your photography, videography, graphic design, and other needs. Again, check them out, guys. ClarityMultimedia.com. Could also follow them on social media. So today, for episode 1, we are jumping into one of the most popular stories that you guys are hearing over the news, social media, and everywhere else. And that's regarding the rap mogul. Yep, you know it. Sean Diddy Combs. So let's go ahead and jump right in.
R&B singer Cassie has accused hip-hop mogul Sean Diddy Combs of rape and a decade of physical abuse.
Also tonight, music mogul Sean Diddy Combs accused of sex trafficking and sexual assault in a lawsuit filed in federal court here in New York.
Breaking news tonight and what appears to be a huge development in the lawsuit involving Sean Combs. Moments ago, word coming out that Combs and R&B singer Cassandra Ventura have settled
the full-scale raid. Federal Homeland Security, with the help of local law enforcement, executing 2 searches in 2 cities at the same time. 2 sprawling luxury mansions belonging to one of the most successful hip-hop moguls in the world, Sean Diddy Combs.
All right, everyone. I think the big question is, did Diddy do it? Well, I don't think we'll be able to answer that question in this video, but I will be able to give you some insight as to what's happened, where we are now, and what I think will occur based upon my opinion. But let's go ahead and jump right in and see where we're at. So, what's happened with Diddy thus far? Essentially, if you guys recall, whether you're watching the news or on social media, there's a huge lawsuit that sort of started this domino effect for Diddy and his legal problems, including the first civil lawsuit that was filed by his ex, as you guys may know her by Cassie. Her real name is Cassandra Ventura, and she filed a lawsuit back in November against Diddy, accusing him of rape. And there was a slew of alarming and egregious and just a host of allegations that you just, if you dig into that lawsuit and you don't want to be negatively affected by what's stated in there, I'm cautioning you, just go in there with that mindset that you are going to uncover some pretty egregious and horrific allegations in that lawsuit. For example, a couple things that Cassie stated in that lawsuit was she was held down by Mr. Combs or Diddy and endured over a decade of violent behavior and disturbing demands. Some of that included Diddy blowing up another man's car of an individual she was talking to during their relationship or situationship, however you wanted to refer to it these days. When he learned that she was romantically involved or interested in, I guess I should say, with Cassie. I believe he's another rapper, but I'll let you guys do that search and make a conclusion for yourselves. Again, here our goal is to, again, present what's out there, but also try not to give you guys anything that I can't 100% say that's true based upon what's been filed or what's occurred. So you guys can do that search and see what name that is going around that people are speculating, in which she claims Diddy blew up their car. So other thing that was mentioned by Cassie in that lawsuit was that Diddy forced her to have S with male S workers while he watched, did some crazy things to himself, which I'll let you guys think about that. And not only that, but she also claims that he recorded those incidents. Again, very disturbing allegations here. So that's pretty disturbing. The other things are the allegations of abuse. For example, she claims that Diddy repeatedly kicked her in the face and wouldn't stop, even after a member of his security team tried to de-escalate the situation. Again, just an alarming situation that she claims occurred. She also alleged that Diddy encouraged her to use, again, drugs and alcohol in excessive amounts that would force her to do things that she didn't necessarily want to do or didn't have the capacity to express whether or not she wanted to do them. And so, just a side note, I will be including the links to copies of these lawsuits. I know there is one lawsuit in particular that has been amended, I think twice at this point. It's the final lawsuit we'll talk about, but there will be links to these lawsuits in the description below, so that way you guys could go through them in detail if you wish. Again, just a word of caution, there is a lot of disturbing claims and allegations in those documents. So back to this. Again, tons and tons of horrific things in the Cassie lawsuit. However, interestingly, the very next day, the case was settled. So you could speculate as to what that means. Of course, I do not have a copy of the settlement agreement, as we would refer to in the civil world. A little background on that. Typically, when there's a civil lawsuit, regardless of the causes of action in there, of course, in this one, one of them was SA, among other things. Usually when a settlement comes about, there is a settlement agreement and a release. Again, typically those settlement agreements would include a dollar amount in exchange for dismissing the lawsuit. It would also include a release of any and all claims or any claim of liability that could have arisen from the suit or the claims that were stated in the lawsuit. For example, if this were the typical case, I would suspect that Cassie signed a release relieving Diddy of any further liability as a result of that settlement. However, I don't know if that occurred here. That's just the standard practice in the civil realm. And so until we actually get that settlement document, we don't know exactly what the details and the terms are of that settlement. But until then, we could only speculate. And so I'd give you guys some word of caution as to what the settlement really means. I mean, there are times where parties will settle a case in the interest of just not having to engage in further litigation. As you guys may know, litigation can be very costly, not only, again, from a money and resources perspective, but it takes up a tremendous amount of time, could last years, depending on the extent of the lawsuit and, what needs to be uncovered. And so, again, until we have that actual settlement document, if we ever get it, we could only speculate as to the reason they settled the next day. In fact, most of these settlements do have a confidentiality provision that would prevent the parties from disclosing particular terms or even talking at all about the settlement. And so, again, I'm not sure if that was included here, but until we have further information, we will stick with that. But it is interesting that the lawsuit was settled the very next day. In fact, Cassie had a statement on it where she stated, "I've decided to resolve this matter amicably on terms that I have some level of control. I want to thank my family, fans, and lawyers for their unwavering support." Of course, Diddy had a statement as well. He stated, "I wish Cassie and her family all the best. Love." Diddy's lawyer in this case stated that the decision to settle was, quote, "in no way an admission of wrongdoing." That's typical. In fact, that language is also used in a usual settlement document. So that's not out of the ordinary for a lawyer to come out with that statement, especially after settlement, given that some sort of language to that effect is also used in the settlement agreement. He further went on to say, Mr. Combs' decision to settle the lawsuit does not in any way undermine his flat-out denial of the claims. Again, quote, he is happy that they got to a mutual settlement and wishes Miss Ventura the best. So that is the Cassie lawsuit in a nutshell. Again, if you're going to read that, I caution you before you dive in. There will be a link to that, but there is some disturbing details. Again, that was filed in November. There were couple more lawsuits filed in November of last year. One woman filed a lawsuit alleging Diddy drugged and SA'd her in 1991. There's a third woman who filed a lawsuit alleging Diddy SA'd her in the early 1990s. And then a fourth lawsuit in December of last year accusing Diddy of SA as well. And so there's a slew of lawsuits coming out after the Cassie lawsuit, especially after the settlement. I'm not sure if you guys have heard in the legal world, especially in the civil realm, is usually individuals, one of the things that prevents them from settling, especially when it can open the floodgates to more claimants bringing forth a lawsuit with the motive of getting a quick payday. And so, is that what they did here? I couldn't say, but I think that's usually an impression that some folks will get, especially once they see that a case settled the very next day after filing. Of course, per the rules in terms of what you need to be able to file a lawsuit, typically you want to have a good faith basis and not file, any futile or unsubstantiated claims. However, I will tell you, courts do lean more towards everyone having their day in court. And so to file a lawsuit, of course, usually it does take a lot of time and resources, especially having to get legal counsel. Of course, there's some things that go into play in terms of how you could actually retain an attorney and how the attorney gets paid, which might allow someone that would not otherwise be able to afford legal counsel and file a lawsuit of this caliber, especially in federal court, to be able to take that action. But I think, again, seeing that the Cassie lawsuit filed just one day after she filed it probably had a little bit to do with those individuals deciding to file a lawsuit as well. But the fifth lawsuit, which was also in December of last year, was filed in the U.S. District Court of New York, who named Diddy's adult son, Justin, his chief of staff, Universal Music Group CEO, Motown Records CEO, along with those companies as well. I believe, again, those copies will be in the description so you guys could confirm. But in that lawsuit, it was filed by Rodney Jones, or who is known in the industry as Lil Rod. He's filing that lawsuit seeking $30 million. In the lawsuit, he claims that he lived and traveled with Diddy from September 2022 to November 2023. During that time, he claims he has hours and hours of video and audio of Diddy, his staff, associates, and other individuals engaging in serious illegal activity. He goes as far as claiming that Combs or Diddy, along with these executives, associates, and companies, worked together in what he characterized, and what we'll talk a little bit more about with regards to the criminal aspect, is he called them a RICO enterprise, and that these companies failed to adequately monitor, warn, supervise the actions of Diddy, his sons, and all these other higher level executives. You will be able to see the causes of action in those lawsuits. Typically, these are the legal basis for being able to file a lawsuit based upon what's been factually alleged. It kind of ties the two together. Once you have the facts of that suit, you have to tie it to some sort of legal basis, or what we call cause of action, that gives you the ability to be able to make that legal claim. So with regards to the RICO enterprise and illegal activity, this would probably fall under more of the premises liability theory, some other torts. that he further alleges a little bit further in the lawsuit. Again, a couple more things that he alleges. He claims that Diddy constantly engaged in unauthorized groping and touching. He accuses Combs of S.A.ing him, or accuses Combs of S.A., and he accuses his associates, including, I believe, who he claimed was his chief of staff, of aiding and pretty much assisting Diddy to groom Lil Rod into accepting a homosexual relationship with Diddy. And so again, all allegations, you could dive into those in, I believe, this one was a 70-some page lawsuit. Link will be below. He also claims that there was soliciting of S workers to perform S acts with them to please Diddy. So really similar to what, as I mentioned earlier, what Cassie alleged in her lawsuit. So we are seeing some parallels between these allegations, which does, I think, give some weight to them. Does it mean that they're 100% true? Well, we can't say that until these individuals are actually put on the stand and testifying, and we actually get a decision from a court. However, it's interesting to note that there are a lot of parallels in these allegations and these slew of lawsuits. Lil Rod also claims that Diddy drugged him. Specifically, he refers to February 2nd, 2023. He states that he woke up without any clothes on, to that effect, dizzy and confused, in bed with Diddy and 2 S workers. Also, he goes on to state that he has overwhelming, indisputable proof, including, as people have been saying, he came with the receipts of audio and video of all the allegations that he's putting forth in that lawsuit, including, some people have speculated that from the footnotes in this lawsuit, there's a couple of individuals, prominent individuals, not only in the rap industry, but also in the rap/R&B industry, that have worked with or associated with Diddy. From the description in those footnotes, some people have speculated who those individuals are. I'll let you guys read those footnotes for yourselves and make those conclusions, but I think they are, not 100% clear, but it leads us in one direction, to put it simply. Of course, in response to the lawsuits filed by the individuals after Cassie, Diddy did issue a statement, and he said, "Enough is enough. Let me be absolutely clear. I did not do any of the awful things being alleged. I will fight for my name, my family, and for the truth." Also, after the Lil Rod Jones lawsuit was filed, his attorney also stated, "We have overwhelming, indisputable proof that his claims are complete lies." Again, this is Diddy's attorney claiming that everything Lil Rod is stating in his lawsuit are completely lies. So where does that leave us in terms of the civil aspect of it? Well, if these cases don't settle like the Cassie lawsuit, we could expect them to continue on with the pretrial procedures, as we would call them as attorneys, including, doing more discovery, asking more people questions, identifying more witnesses, trying to get more documents, exchanging that information with between counsel, including Lil Rod's counsel and Diddy's counsel. And then if it doesn't settle, ultimately going to trial and whether it's a judge or a jury hearing these cases to see if we can't get an ultimate resolution. I would anticipate that if some of these cases do go to trial, including the Lil Rod lawsuit, particularly because it seems like he provided the most information, including pictures and things of that nature, and also his claim of having hours of audio and video, that one I would assume would be highly publicized if it were to go to trial, but we will have to wait and see. And so, as you guys know, last week, a couple of Diddy's properties in LA and Miami were raided, or maybe to put more simply, were searched by federal agents. Particularly, those agents were from Homeland Security Investigations. I believe the offices that conducted the searches of the property were from the Miami offices and the LA offices. There is some, I did read somewhere else that there might have been some agents from the NY offices as well. You saw from the footage that, there's SWAT team. There's also what they refer to as SRT agents. Shout out to a couple people for breaking that down as well, where I was able to get that information. So HSI, Homeland Security Investigations, was the agency that executed on these searches. Of course, they had to have had a federal search warrant in order to conduct the search and the raids, as the MSM called it. And so, I think what's important to touch on here is how they were able to obtain that federal search warrant. Also, I should note, though, that Homeland Security Investigations doesn't necessarily get as much publicity or attention as some of the other agencies, such as CIA or the FBI. Those are the agencies you typically hear more about, whether it's in the news or otherwise. And so, but to much of the credit of HSI, they've worked on cases particularly related to Chavo Guzman. I think they also helped in the investigation and eventual prosecution of R. Kelly, and also, I believe, Tekashi 6ix9ine. So they have worked on prominent, popular, and highly public cases that we've all heard about at some time or another. And they are the agency that executed these federal search warrants at Diddy's properties. So now, how did they have the ability to get the search warrant? Well, one, they have to have jurisdiction. Well, they have jurisdiction primarily because of some of the allegations that I think we could pull from the civil lawsuits. Does that mean that's where they got the information? Well, I'm sure that the civil lawsuits did help them compile the information necessary to get the federal search warrant. But I'm assuming there were also some other individuals either interviewed, or they had some other statements and maybe other pieces of evidence, including documents or the like, that they could have utilized in order to get the search warrant. The other thing that I think is important to mention is the allegations include, particularly the civil lawsuits, include individuals that were involved who may have been minors or under the age of 18 and were, either flown or driven or otherwise across state lines, which essentially would make it interstate or foreign commerce, essentially. And so, given that a lot of those allegations were related to SA under the SA criminal statute, those are very specific words and language that's used in that statute that would allow these federal agents and agencies to have jurisdiction to not only investigate, but pursue and assist the attorneys working for the feds to be able to develop this search warrant to present it to a federal judge. And so that's how they have the jurisdiction. I'm sure there's some other avenues that they cited to that would allow them to have the jurisdiction. But also, I think the important piece to know is that this federal search warrant was issued out of the New York Southern District, which is the federal court out in New York in the Southern District. And working on the case, of course, is what we would refer to as the United States Attorney's Office, or what us attorneys know them by as AUSAs. this office in particular has quite the reputation from a national and global standpoint. I believe these federal prosecutors, one case in particular that they worked on was the Epstein case. So the Southern District, along with the Eastern District out in New York, do have quite the reputation for carrying out and working on some of these, very, very high level and highly public cases, and being very, very successful in those prosecutions. And so I think that's also a big thing to consider, and to say that, they must have enough to be able to get that federal search warrant out of that district and get that federal judge to sign off. So I think, we could touch on a little bit more in terms of, from a general standpoint, what it would take to get that federal search warrant. Again, coming out of this district, I could tell you that, in my opinion, it would assume, and based upon my research, it appears that to obtain a federal search warrant in general is very, very, very difficult to achieve, to have that judge sign off. Primarily because, one, it has to comply with the U.S. Constitution, particularly the Fourth Amendment, and you need probable cause to support that warrant to be able to sign off. And so you need to be able to have certain items to support that probable cause to present to the judge to make the case as to why these or this federal search warrant should be issued to allow these federal agents to search Diddy's properties. Again, it's highly difficult to achieve it in general, but the fact that it came out of the Southern District of New York also speaks volumes, and the fact that, the federal magistrate judge had to sign off on it in that district just goes to show that there must have been quite either a voluminous amount of information, especially as we see there's a slew of civil lawsuits filed, but maybe the weight of that information that they had and evidence was enough to, have that magistrate judge sign off on it. I think obviously the civil lawsuits led to the establishment or made up a big part of the probable cause. Again, whether it was through witnesses or documents to support that search warrant. Some things that you might see in support of probable cause in the search warrant would be, again, statements or affidavits, anything they compile from those lawsuits. I mean, heck, maybe even just citing to those complaints themselves. I'm sure they're interviewing other folks. I'm sure they might even have video or audio, especially with the allegation made by Lil Rod in his lawsuit. So that's pretty much the federal search warrant in a nutshell, and what they have to comply with in order to get it. What's that standard probable cause? It's specifically stated in the Fourth Amendment. And it's important to note, too, that it's not easy not only to get a federal search warrant for the items already stated, but, the home is one of the greatest places that you have protection and privacy. And so, with the protection of that Fourth Amendment, the feds have to ensure that they have enough to allow them to get that federal search warrant, so that way there's not any unlawful or unreasonable searches and seizures upon properties owned by private individuals. And so, again, I think it's important to note that, but also, one, we don't have the actual search warrant, so I couldn't review that with you guys. I'm hoping we are able to get a copy sometime soon, but I don't think that will be the case, especially since it is an ongoing and what appears to be a criminal investigation at this point. I don't suspect that we will see that anytime soon. However, if you want to get an idea of what a federal search warrant looks like, you could probably search and find a copy of the search warrant for the Mar-a-Lago search. That will give you a good idea of what's in there, the structure, and that probable cause statement that's required to be presented and met in order for the judge to consider and eventually sign off on that federal search warrant. Of course, I'm sure you guys saw all the clips of just how much agents were on the properties, the level of preparedness they had, from the SWAT team to the types of agents on the ground. It was quite the scene at the properties. In fact, Diddy's attorney for that particular piece of his legal problems, his name is Aaron Dyer, and he issued a statement as well claiming that the searches were a gross overuse of military level force. He also stated there's no excuse for the excessive show of force and hostility exhibited by the authorities or the way his children and employees were treated. Mr. Combs was never detained, but spoke to and cooperated with authorities. Combs is innocent and will continue to fight every single day to clear his name. He also added, I believe, that Diddy had not been found liable for any of the allegations against him. I think he was referring to the civil allegations. Again, none of those have... I think his statement is a little premature given that those cases haven't went to trial. So, in fact, it would be at this point impossible for him to be found liable of those allegations against him. Not only that, I think his characterization of the level and type of presence by the agency and agents at the properties is a little bit of a mischaracterization. For example, in my opinion, having some experience dealing and representing law enforcement and working on law enforcement cases, I would suspect that at the federal level, the feds, including these agents and agencies, would show up with a level of force, anticipating worst case, so to speak, so that, they are ready and prepared to deal with anything they might uncover on those properties, especially with the, seriousness of the allegations or any other information that they might have had. For example, they don't know if they're going to uncover, something that may pose a threat or someone that may pose a threat. For example, upon breach of the property, they may encounter someone with a firearm that refuses to, obey lawful commands that results in having to use certain amount of force. So I think the way in which the raid was carried out from the outside looking in, of course, I don't have any documents or anything showing the briefing on the raid or anything of that nature in which the agents would have had before carrying out the raid or search. But I think from a standard point of view, it seems like they were just abiding by how they were trained and what the standard operating procedures are for those agents and the agency to deal with this type of case. But yeah, in other words, they just didn't know what would be uncovered at the properties during the search, and they just have to be prepared. So I think the excessive show of force characterization fails to consider those important aspects of how, the agency and others, including those agents, are trained, what the procedures are for carrying out that type of search. So I think that, of course, it's the media. Things are going to be a bit exaggerated. And, I think that's one of the reasons we try and bring this to you, is so that way you guys can see and take apart these statements that you might hear in the news or on social media, because they're not always 100% accurate, but also I think it's just a matter of opinion and exaggeration sometimes. So I think that was an important aspect to include there. So what happened after, these searches and seizures? Well, on the same day, we found out that one of which they're claiming, again, multiple sources are claiming that one of Diddy's associates by the name of Brendan Paul, fairly young guy, 25 years old, was arrested at the airport in Miami on charges of possession of drugs, essentially. I think they indicated cocaine and marijuana. Sources claim that was based on a police report, so that seems pretty legit. Interestingly, Paul was a former basketball player at Syracuse University. And again, multiple sources are claiming Paul was an associate of Diddy. In fact, Paul is mentioned in the Lil Rod or the Jones lawsuit. And in that lawsuit, Lil Rod claims that Paul was required to carry drugs and guns for Diddy when Diddy traveled. Some people, there's rumors out there stating that he was a drug mule, that, he always had to have drugs on his possession, things of that nature. But, it could just be someone that, was, associating with Diddy, happened to be, at that time and place, and happened to have, drugs on him at the time. Of course, I think it's important to let the process play out and see, what they uncover regarding Paul. But I thought that was an interesting aspect to mention, given what has resulted from the searches. I think also they've discovered that there's some firearms recovered. I also think they recovered, as I mentioned, which seems to be their intent, given the allegations in the civil suits or anything they might have had on hand. Was some electronics. I think there were some pictures of some agents that had bagged some laptops, and probably some other types of electronics, tablets, more computers, surveillance, things of that nature, I think is most likely what they were looking for. But again, it seems like they did uncover some firearms. Firearm piece could be that, these were lawfully obtained and purchased firearms. I don't find it very alarming that someone of Diddy's caliber and the amount of traffic and associates, types of associates he probably has, that, especially security, things of that nature. It doesn't surprise me that firearms would be found on the property. However, that's if they are legally obtained firearms. And so if they find firearms that were illegally obtained or put together and things of that nature that would violate some federal statute, including those that may require, a federal stamp to have possession of, then I think then that could contribute to, any charges that may come about. So that leads us to, what should we expect, next after these searches? So in my opinion, what I think will happen is people will be subpoenaed, a grand jury will be convened, and there will be some charges that will be filed, including, I believe, against Diddy. Some have speculated whether he is the target of this search or whether they were searching his properties for some other reason. I mean, based upon the civil lawsuits and everything that's occurred thus far and all the coverage that has been had in terms of what's been unfolding with Diddy, I think he is the target. I think he will be charged as a result of this, and as they continue to build a case against him. Now we might suspect, okay, what charges might be brought against Diddy or anyone else, including, his associates or those that were involved at the corporate level, including those higher level executives. I think we have to suspect that they are looking into those individuals as well. But I do think Diddy and his circle, so to speak, are the target of this, and him and others will be charged. The question is, what will they be charged with? Well, I think, as we saw in Lil Rod's lawsuit, he claims that Diddy was essentially operating and involved in a RICO enterprise. Again, a RICO enterprise, RICO stands for a Racketeer Influenced and Corrupt Organizations Act. Again, Racketeer Influenced and Corrupt Organizations Act, or RICO. A RICO enterprise is any individuals or groups that act together to violate that act. If you looked up RICO Act, you would find that there's a slew and list of illegal and criminal offenses that would fall under that act, especially if they're able to establish that criminal enterprise to fall under that statute. And so I think that they are shooting for the RICO enterprise primarily because there is one important aspect that would allow prosecutors to carry out, which is charges or allegations that might have been presented or prevented from coming forth as a result of amount of time that have lapsed, including a statute of limitations. So if a certain amount has passed since the crime was committed, and the prosecutors or local DA hasn't brought a case against that individual within that time period, then they are barred from bringing forth that charge. However, I think the reason they want to bring forth a RICO charge is because under RICO, if they're able to establish that criminal enterprise, then it opens the door on the statute of limitations, and a charge that may not have been otherwise brought forward by prosecution due to the statute of limitations, they would be able to bring it as a result of that RICO charge and establishing that RICO enterprise. And so it's very important to keep an eye out whether they do charge them under that RICO statute, because then that would just really open the door for anything to come in, including any of the allegations that lead to charges that would otherwise not be able to come forward, given that it's been so long. And so I think that's their motive here in terms of what information they have and what they're trying to establish, primarily because that's usually how they look at these cases. I mean, you could take a look at what the RICO statute is famous for, some of the bigger crime and mob boss cases, things of that nature. A lot of the mobsters were brought down with this statute. And so I think it allows them to do things of that nature to, expand and try and hold these individuals more accountable, especially if they were a part of that criminal enterprise. And so that's what I think. I could be wrong, but I think based upon what's happened and how these agencies frame their cases, and based upon my research, I think that's what will occur. We will wait and see if that is the case. Final takes here, I think, to leave you guys with as we see what happens as this case moves forward is, I think anyone that's involved or named or a witness or whatever it may be should consult some sort of legal counsel. Again, I would say they should consult with legal counsel, not only so that they could be prepared, but also if there's any criminal implications or they might be implicated by way of association, or anything they did with the organization or certain individuals, including Diddy. I think it would be, even if it doesn't come out to anything and they just want to be on the safe side, I think anyone that thinks they, even may remotely become involved, I think they should consult legal counsel. Another interesting final take we have here is Cassie did post that she was assisting the FBI on a other case that some have speculated Diddy may have been involved in. Might be a little more conspiracy leaning at this time, but Cassie did state she's assisting the FBI on the Kim Porter case. Kim Porter is the mother of Diddy's children. Most of his children, I guess I should say, and there is some suspected foul play from many commentators and other sources about her death, as it was a little suspicious in their opinion, and they believe that he had something to do with her death. And so we'll see how that unplays as well, but I thought that was interesting. And with it, I think we could also suspect that kind of 100% confirm that she is also working with the feds on this case to help them build that up. Other interesting comment was Suge Knight, of all people, tells Diddy in a message that his life's in danger. I think the final take I'll leave you guys with is one of the prosecutors also commentated on what's going on here. And this prosecutor particularly helped put R. Kelly behind bars. And her comments were on the searches and raids. And she said, if I'm P. Diddy or his lawyers, I'd be very concerned. So that just gives you something to think about. This is a prosecutor that put R. Kelly away, very similar case and what's being alleged. So I think that holds some weight. But all I could say is we will wait and see. There's some other interesting aspects that I didn't necessarily cover here, but just wanted to give you guys a brief overview, give you some of the legal ramifications and aspects of that, and how we got to, see that search, what these civil cases entail. But if you'd like to see more on this Diddy subject, or would like to dive into maybe a little bit more in depth on the causes of action or legal basis in those civil lawsuits, I'd be happy to do that, or any other aspect. Just drop me a comment below, and I will do my best to bring you some of that content. But for now, that's all we got on Diddy's legal problems. And so the question remains to be answered if Diddy did it. But, we'll wait and see. Again, I think it's important that we let the process play out. Of course, in our system, everyone is innocent until proven guilty. And I think in order for the process to work, and for our legal system and our country in which it operates, I think we have to allow it to play out. I think the country, again, is second to none, and the way we operate, we need to allow it to play out. Of course, there's issues that need to be fleshed out, just like anything else, but we have to trust the process. We'll see what happens, and we'll go from there. But that does it for episode 1 of The Decree. I hope you guys enjoyed the information and the show today. Again, if you guys keep supporting Julio G TV, we'll keep growing. So I would really appreciate it if you hit that subscribe button. And if you like, go ahead and turn on those notifications so you get informed of when I upload more content, including The Decree and other pieces of content that we'll be having here on Julio G TV. But with that, I appreciate you all watching, and we will see you on the next one. Peace.